There comes a moment along the path when the soul begins to move from a completely different place. It is no longer the restless mind chasing meaning, nor the tired body longing for stability. It is something far older, far deeper, a force hidden beneath the surface, as though an ember preserved for centuries has suddenly flared to life. This is the first spark, and it does not arrive through your planning nor your effort. It rises uninvited, igniting without your consent, like a torch passed down from a forgotten ancestor. It is not euphoria nor fleeting motivation. It is vibration, raw, primal, intense, that shakes the marrow of your bones and rearranges the very way you stand in the world. This fire does not burn to destroy. It burns to reveal. It does not drag you forward like ambition. It awakens you, strips you of illusions, until all that is false falls away like ashes on the wind. And when it activates, you feel the weight of every mask you have ever worn. Pretending becomes impossible. Habits that once shielded you from yourself no longer fit. The soul begins to remember why it came here, and this memory has no words, only a silent urgency, a pulse that shifts everything it touches. History has always recognized this mysterious flame. The Greeks told of Prometheus stealing fire from the gods, not just to give humanity warmth, but to awaken consciousness. In the Vedic hymns, the god Agni, the sacred fire, was said to dwell inside every living being, a messenger between humans and the divine. And in Persia, the eternal flame of Zoroaster burned without end, a reminder that there is something within us that cannot be extinguished, no matter how many centuries pass. So it is with the fire stirring in you. At first, it is only an impulse, an unshakable stirring in the chest. It does not ask permission. It does not wait for the right timing. It appears suddenly, like lightning setting dry fields ablaze. Though it may not yet have form, it has direction, away from what dims you and toward what feels alive. Even if the world does not understand your shift, you understand. You realize you are not chasing after something new. You are answering something ancient, something that has always waited beneath the surface for you to stop silencing it. This spark does not hand you a map. Instead, it tells you in absolute clarity what you can no longer tolerate. You wake with a quiet discomfort that no distraction erases, a restlessness that does not fade with entertainment or noise. For the first time, you sense that life is not about filling voids. It is about honoring the flame that has been waiting for its moment to burn, to illuminate, to transform everything at the root. Pretending is betrayal now. Comfort feels like a cage. And the voice inside, though it does not shout, cannot be silenced. It does not argue with logic. It burns, steady and undeniable. Even if part of you wishes to smother it to keep fitting in, you already know. It is too late. The ember has caught. The first spark has been lit. One of the first signs of this awakening is an inner impulse that you cannot explain, yet you also cannot ignore. It is not born from logic, nor does it arise from ambition or external goals. It does not arrive as a neatly drawn plan. Instead, it vibrates directly from your chest, urgent and alive, demanding movement without hesitation. This is not the call of reason. It is the call of fire. The strange thing about this impulse is its lack of clarity. It may not present itself as a grand vision, nor does it hand you a destination, but it does reveal what you can no longer continue doing. It pulls you away from what drains you, what dims your light, what suffocates the essence of who you are. And though you may not yet see where it leads, you know you cannot stay where you are. Throughout history, such impulses have shaped destinies. Joan of Arc, a peasant girl, claimed to hear voices from heaven urging her to lead France. Though she could not explain it, the impulse was too strong to ignore, and it carried her into battles that altered the fate of nations. Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who would become the Buddha, left his palace not because of logic or strategy, but because a stirring within refused to let him remain in a life of comfort while truth awaited outside. Prophets, poets, and revolutionaries alike have felt this same fire, an unseen hand pulling them from safety into the unknown. And you too begin to feel it in small ways. What once satisfied you now leaves you restless. What once felt comfortable now feels like betrayal. You wake with a subtle unease, a pressure in the chest that no distraction dissolves. It is not hunger for more. It is refusal to keep living in less. This impulse does not shout, but it never leaves. It whispers relentlessly until its voice becomes stronger than fear. You find yourself moving, almost against your will, toward what feels alive. The world may not understand. Those around you may ask for explanations. But the truth is, there are no words that can fully capture what is happening. You are not searching for something new, you are responding to something ancient. And once you respond, the shift becomes undeniable. Comfort no longer comforts. Pretending no longer works. You are stepping into a current larger than yourself, carried not by reason, but by resonance. And in this current, even uncertainty feels like truth, because you know the fire has chosen to speak. As the days unfold beneath the weight of this new fire, a soft but persistent discomfort begins to seep into your life. It is not the kind of discomfort that can be drowned in distractions or numbed with the usual routines. It is subtler, deeper, an ache that lingers at the edges of every task, every conversation, every silence. Where once hollow diversions sufficed, now they only amplify the emptiness. The world you once constructed to protect yourself suddenly feels too small, like a garment you've outgrown. The strange thing is, nothing outwardly has changed. You still go to work, still talk to the same people, still follow familiar habits. Yet internally, every step feels misaligned, every word rehearsed. Pretending becomes unbearable. To stay in comfort now feels like betrayal. The soul, once content to sleep, now demands truth. And with this demand comes the awareness that routines, once a refuge, have become prisons. Psychologists have long written of this moment. Carl Jung called it the path of individuation, the point at which a person can no longer deny the deeper self in favor of roles and masks imposed by society. Nietzsche spoke of it as the painful duty to become who you are, to tear down the false scaffolding of borrowed identities. Ancient mystics called it the dark night of the soul, a period when the illusions of the world collapse, leaving only the raw ember of truth within. This stage is not easy. It feels like standing on the shore of a vast sea, knowing you cannot return inland, yet fearing the waters before you. Many throughout history have faced this threshold. Think of Augustine, who could no longer drown himself in pleasures of the flesh because a fire of truth burned him from within until he surrendered to a new life. Or of the medieval monks who abandoned wealth, power, and family to sit in silence, believing that the comfort of society was more dangerous than the wilderness of God. Your life may not look so dramatic, but the essence is the same. What used to satisfy now frustrates you, not because you are ungrateful, but because you see clearly the structures you once upheld are no longer sustaining you. You realize that much of what you called stability was merely survival, and much of what you called happiness was a mask over restlessness. And so the fire reveals itself as liberation, not punishment. Though it may strip you bare, though it may leave you vulnerable, it frees you from illusions you had mistaken for truth. The old ways cannot hold you, because you are no longer the same. With every day you honor the discomfort, it grows clearer. The life you thought was safe is too small for the soul now awakening within you. The second sign of this awakening arrives quietly, almost without warning. You begin to release what once felt essential, and to your surprise, you do so without pain. People, places, habits, even dreams that you once clung to as lifelines now slip gently from your grasp. It is not loss. It is cleansing, a soft unraveling, as if a wiser part of you has been making choices on your behalf. This is the fire's nature. It not only illuminates, it also burns away. And what it consumes is never what is true, but only what no longer serves you. What once bound you in loyalty now feels like chains. What once seemed sacred now feels heavy. You don't walk away in anger. You walk away in clarity. Throughout cultures, humanity has honored this sacred act of letting go. The ancients lit bonfires at the turning of seasons, burning old possessions as symbols of renewal. In Japan, the ritual of usugi sweeps away clutter at year's end, making space for purity and balance. Among indigenous peoples, smoke ceremonies and fire rituals cleanse both spirit and environment, teaching that release is not destruction, it is transformation. And so too in your life, release arrives not with bitterness, but with reverence. The friendship that once carried you but no longer speaks your language fades quietly. The ambitions that once drove you but now feel foreign fall away without resistance. Even long-held habits, worn like familiar garments, no longer cling to you. There is grief, yes, but it is light grief, softened by the understanding that you are not losing, you are preparing. Consider how many through history have been reshaped by the courage to release. Saint Francis of Assisi stripping himself of wealth and family inheritance to live in holy poverty. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, letting go of endless pleasures and luxuries to live by stoic discipline. Or closer to our time, writers and artists abandoning stable careers for the uncertain path of creation, knowing that to cling to safety was to abandon the soul. It is the same with you. Every release clears a space within you that habit once occupied. Every farewell opens a chamber inside you for something truer to take root. And with each step away from what is no longer alive, you feel lighter, freer, closer to the pulse of your essence. The fire within does not ask you to destroy. It asks you to allow. It asks you to let what is already withering fall, so that your energy may return to what is real. This is not abandonment of duty. This is fidelity to the soul. And though a part of you may fear emptiness, you soon discover the truth. Emptiness is not absence. It is space. It is potential. It is the soil in which the fire grows stronger. And in that space you finally begin to sense not what you are losing, but what is waiting to be born. The fire within you grows brighter, and with its light comes an unshakable clarity. Tolerating misalignment is no longer possible. What you once endured with patience now feels suffocating. What you once justified with excuses now feels unbearable. The third sign of awakening is not dramatic revolt, but a quiet refusal to keep betraying yourself. You begin to see relationships, beliefs, even identities for what they are, temporary garments, not eternal truths. Some of these garments once fit you perfectly. They gave you warmth, belonging, protection. But now they cling too tightly, restricting your breath, muting your voice. To keep wearing them would be to deny the person you have become. And so, like a serpent shedding its skin, you let them fall away. There is no anger in this shedding, no resentment, only gratitude for what has passed. You honor the seasons those parts of your life served, but you no longer mistake them for your essence. History is full of such transformations. In ancient Rome, augurs would declare the end of cycles, signaling to the people that one era had passed and another had begun. Medieval monks, taking their vows, renounced family names, wealth, and even their old identities, stepping into new lives with shaved heads and new robes. In each case, the act was not destruction, but renewal, a conscious shedding of what no longer served. You feel the same force at work within you now. The fire has made dishonesty with yourself intolerable. It shines so brightly that it reveals what you once managed to hide. And once seen, you cannot return to blindness. Staying in places where your soul no longer breathes feels like trying to inhale in a room without air. This shedding is not without pain. There are moments when nostalgia tugs, when memories tempt you to turn back. Yet the pull of truth is stronger. You realize that to cling to what has ended is not loyalty. It is self-abandonment. And you are no longer willing to betray yourself. Instead, there is quiet gratitude. You thank what is leaving, and you allow it to go. You do not erase it. You release it. And in doing so, you discover something unexpected. What once felt like loss now feels like liberation. Every time you shed what no longer aligns, the fire within grows steadier. Every step away from false structures is a step toward the raw, unfiltered truth of your being. You are not becoming less. You are becoming precise. You are not narrowing. You are refining. And though the shedding may make you feel momentarily bare, you begin to understand that bareness is not weakness. It is freedom. Without old skins, without borrowed masks, without the weight of outdated loyalties, you walk lighter, breathe deeper, and stand clearer in the world. The fire has stripped you down to your essence, and in that essence lies strength you never knew you carried. The third sign of awakening arrives with startling force. You begin to act without asking for permission. For so long you waited for approval, from parents, from society, from the invisible audience in your mind that always demanded explanations. But now something inside has shifted. The fire no longer allows you to sit idle while your soul waits. Action flows from you, not as rebellion, but as necessity. This movement is not reckless. It does not arise from ego or the hunger to prove yourself. It comes from alignment, from that deep vibration in your chest that whispers, "If not now, when?" You find yourself making decisions that once terrified you. Steps that seemed impossible now feel inevitable. You no longer wait for the perfect conditions because you've realized the perfect moment does not arrive by itself. It is born when you move. History is full of souls who embodied this truth. Galileo, forbidden to publish his discoveries, still wrote, driven by a fire greater than the threat of silence. Vincent van Gogh painted furiously, though the world ignored him, because not painting would have been a betrayal of his very existence. Harriet Tubman risked her life leading enslaved people to freedom, not because the world permitted her, but because the fire within her refused stillness. And so too within you, a quiet but unshakable strength emerges. You realize that postponing what is true is a form of self-abandonment. The ideas, creations, and choices stirring within you are not luxuries. They are necessities. If they are not expressed, they will wither inside you, and you can no longer bear the weight of that betrayal. At first, these actions may seem small. A conversation you avoided, but finally speak. A boundary you feared to set, but now declare. A decision you hesitated over, but now embrace. Yet each step, no matter how modest, feeds the fire. It is coherence, not applause, that sustains it. You no longer need recognition because the act itself is liberation. This strength does not shout. It is calm, steady, rooted. It does not demand validation because it carries its own authority. You begin to see that moving from your fire brings relief, even in uncertainty. The tension you once thought normal, born of doing what was expected instead of what was real, fades the moment you align action with truth. And so, you cross an invisible threshold. You no longer act to become someone. You act because you already are someone, and that someone can no longer remain hidden. Every decision forged in fire reinforces your presence. Every step confirms to your soul, I have chosen myself. Even if the world does not notice, you know. And that knowing burns brighter than any applause. The fourth sign of awakening is the dissolving of resistance. You no longer fight change the way you once did. Instead of clinging to the familiar, you begin to meet the unknown with open hands. It is not that fear has vanished. Fear still lingers like a shadow at the edge of every threshold. But the fire within makes you stronger than that fear. What once felt like chaos now appears as possibility. Transitions that used to feel like endings now reveal themselves as beginnings. You stop asking life to remain the same because you sense that sameness is not safety, it is stagnation. You see clearly, now, what served you yesterday can become a prison today. The fire does not allow you to keep clinging to cages, no matter how comfortable they seem. Think of the great turning points of history. The fall of Rome was mourned as catastrophe, yet from its ashes rose medieval Europe, with monasteries preserving knowledge that would later fuel the Renaissance. The Black Death, devastating and cruel, dismantled old structures, but in its wake, new ideas of science, medicine, and art emerged, reshaping human destiny. Even in destruction, there was rebirth, and so it is within your life. Every collapse clears ground for new construction. You begin to sense this truth in your own body. Where once change felt like being swept away by a river, now it feels like learning to swim in its current. You no longer fight the water, you allow it to carry you forward. Each time you release what no longer fits, you notice a quiet strength rising in you. You trust that the fire within does not burn for ruin, but for transformation. The unknown, once unbearable, now carries a strange allure. You may not know where the next path leads, but you know that remaining still would be the greater danger. You have already felt the suffocation of betraying yourself, and you refuse to repeat it. The leap into uncertainty no longer feels like falling, it feels like flying. This shift is subtle, yet profound. You stop negotiating with stagnation. You stop mistaking resistance for stability. You stop telling yourself that clinging to the old is loyalty, when in truth it is abandonment of self. You begin to recognize every change, even the most uncomfortable, as an invitation to evolve, to expand, to burn brighter. And so, even when the world around you shakes, you stand steadier, not because you are immune to fear, but because you trust the design unfolding within the fire. You no longer see life's disruptions as punishment. You see them as activation. The fire has prepared you for this. It has trained you to move with change, not against it. In this way, transformation no longer feels like loss. It feels like becoming. The fifth sign emerges when silence is no longer possible. For years you softened your words, swallowed your truths, and carried the weight of what was unsaid so that others might remain comfortable, but the fire inside you will not allow that silence anymore. It pushes your voice outward, not as noise, not as shouting, but as resonance. You do not speak to convince. You speak to liberate. Your words shift. They are no longer chosen from fear of being too much. They are chosen from respect for yourself. Where once your voice was a tool of adaptation, it now becomes a channel of truth. This truth is not always pleasant. It may unsettle. It may disturb. But it is yours, and it burns too fiercely to remain hidden. History has always been shaped by voices set aflame. Socrates, who refused to stay silent even under threat of death, choosing truth over life itself. Martin Luther King, Jr., whose voice thundered not to dominate but to awaken the sleeping conscience of a nation. And in Vietnam, Thich Quang Duc, the monk who chose fire as both protest and prayer, his silent act screaming louder than any words could. Each of them proves that when truth finds its voice, it no longer asks for permission. You begin to notice how often you once abandoned yourself for peace's sake, how many times you carried silence like a burden, keeping harmony on the outside while chaos burned inside. But now the inner fire refuses compromise. To remain quiet where truth must be spoken feels like suffocation. To dim your voice feels like extinguishing your soul. And yet, when you finally speak, something surprising happens. You discover that expression does not drain you, it frees you. Each word spoken from fire feels like integration, like pieces of yourself, long fragmented, finally returning home. You no longer fragment to belong. You no longer fracture to please. You become whole through the courage to voice what burns inside. This voice is not perfect. It trembles. It hesitates. But trembling truth is stronger than silent deception. The fire does not demand flawless speech. It demands surrender. And even when others do not understand, even when the echo falls into silence, you remain steady, because you are no longer speaking for them. You are speaking to stay loyal to yourself. The moment you do this, you feel a deeper order inside. You breathe easier, you walk lighter, and you realize it is not that the world suddenly accepts you. It is that you have accepted yourself. Your fire has given you a voice, and that voice, even if soft, can no longer be silenced. The sixth sign does not arrive with thunder. It arrives quietly, almost invisibly. Outwardly, your life looks the same. You still walk the same streets, meet the same people, follow the same routines. And yet, beneath the surface, everything begins to shift. People drift away without drama. Others appear suddenly, drawn into your orbit without explanation. Places that once felt like home now seem foreign, and new landscapes call to you with strange familiarity. You are doing nothing different, and yet your world is rearranging itself. This is not chaos. This is alignment. The fire within you has begun to reshape the architecture of your life, dissolving false connections and loosening attachments built on fear or habit. You do not have to fight. You do not even have to decide. Life itself begins to decide for you. What no longer resonates simply fades. What belongs finds a way to stay. At first, this reconfiguration can feel unsettling. You may grieve the quiet departures or question why certain bonds weaken without reason. But slowly, clarity arrives. You realize you are not being punished. You are being prepared. The fire is clearing the path for what is to come. Philosophers once called this the invisible hand of destiny. In Taoist thought, it is wu-wei, effortless alignment with the flow of life. In Christian mysticism, it is providence, the silent orchestration of a greater design. And in every culture, stories remind us that when something ancient awakens within, the world outside reorganizes to match it. Consider how often history has followed this same rhythm. Revolutions rarely begin with explosions. They begin with whispers, with subtle discontent, with quiet shifts in the hearts of people long before banners are raised. The Renaissance did not appear overnight. It grew silently in monasteries and workshops, in fragile manuscripts preserved through centuries of darkness, until the fire of curiosity ignited an age of light. Transformation always begins in silence before it roars. So it is with you. The fire inside you exposes illusions you once clung to. Relationships that were built on convenience, fears, or borrowed identities begin to dissolve. And even if the departures sting, you understand. What is false cannot survive the fire. You stop forcing yourself to fit into spaces that shrink you. You stop chasing after what no longer vibrates with your truth. And in this release, you find peace. Not the shallow peace of comfort zones, but the peace of authenticity. Without effort, without struggle, a new life begins to assemble itself around you. People who see you, not just like you, appear. Connections that do not drain, but energize, take root. Spaces open where your fire is not dimmed, but reflected. This reconfiguration is not destruction. It is revelation. It shows you what was never real, and it introduces you to what always was. Slowly, without spectacle, the old dissolves and the new emerges, not by force, but by grace. The seventh sign comes not with noise, but with clarity. From the ashes of what has fallen away, a new world begins to rise. At first, it feels almost fragile, subtle shifts, small certainties, a deeper calm in the chest. And yet you recognize it for what it is, the architecture of a life aligned with your inner fire. You are no longer defined by what you have lost. You are defined by what you have chosen. The friendships that remain now feel deeper, freer, lighter, as if they do not bind but expand you. The spaces you enter no longer demand you to dim your light. They invite you to burn brighter. Where once emptiness frightened you, now it feels sacred, like fertile soil, awaiting the seeds of what is real. History has always spoken of this renewal through symbols of flame and rebirth. The phoenix of ancient myth rises radiant from its ashes, not in spite of destruction, but because of it. Early Christians spoke of the dawn after long nights of persecution, where faith became strongest precisely when it had been tested by fire. In every culture, stories remind us that death is not the end, but the preparation for a greater rising. So too in your life. The fire within has stripped away illusions, and what remains is something unshakable. You begin to notice a different rhythm in your days, not rushed, not chaotic, but purposeful. You choose differently, not from fear, not from guilt, but from resonance. Every step now hums with coherence. Every gesture carries presence. The beauty of this stage is its simplicity. You do not need grand signs. The fire speaks in small certainties, the ease in your breath, the lightness in your body, the quiet relief of no longer betraying yourself. Even when uncertainty lingers, it no longer paralyzes you. You trust the flame. You trust the path. And as this new world rises, you discover that alignment attracts resonance. People appear who do not merely tolerate you, but recognize you. Circumstances unfold that mirror your inner truth. Life stops being something to endure and begins to feel like something you are co-creating with the very pulse of the universe. The fire has not come to destroy you. It has come to reveal you, to return you to who you were before masks, before roles, before bargains with fear. It does not demand certainty. It only asks that you do not deny yourself the beginning. And so, the journey continues. You are not chasing a goal. You are remembering your purpose. You are not waiting for light to arrive. You are becoming it. The fire that was once hidden now guides your days, not as a passing spark, but as an eternal flame. This is the rising. This is the remembering. This is the new world, born from fire, where you finally step into the truth of who you are.